And then after Clay reads the quote, and by the way, the quote comes from a book which cannot be gotten hold of these days. It's called The Legions of Satan. It was written by a gentleman by the name of Reverend Jonathan Williams, who, after intensive research, I discovered several years ago, was none other than Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, who was a known activist and was actually imprisoned for his speeches against government and tyranny. The quote is factual. The quote is a prediction to Washington of what will happen to the United States. And it has happened, as you can see. And after Clay talks about it, I'm going to talk about the real secret destiny of America and its agenda. Go ahead, Clay. Read the quote.
All right. Sorry. The confession of General Cornwallis to George Washington at Yorktown has been well hidden by historians. Jonathan Williams recorded in his Legions of Satan 1781 that Cornwallis repeated to Washington that a holy war will now begin on America, and when it is ended, America will supposedly be the citadel of freedom, but her millions will unknowingly be loyal subjects to the crown. Cornwallis went on to explain what would seem to be a self-contradiction. Your churches will be used to teach the Jews' religion, and in less than 200 years the whole nation will be working for divine world government. That government that they believe to be divine will be the British Empire. All religions will be permeated with Judaism without even being noticed by the masses. And they will all be under the invisible, all-seeing eye of the Grand Architect of Masonry. And, of course, take a look at your dollar bill, folks. And, indeed, George Washington himself was a Mason, and he gave back through a false religion what he had won with his army. Cornwallis well knew that his military defeat was only the beginning of world catastrophe that would be universal, and that unrest would continue until mind control could be accomplished through a false religion. What he predicted has come to pass. A brief sketch of American history, religious history, and we have seen Masonry infused into every church in America with their veiled phallic religion. Darby and Plymouth Brethren brought a Jewish Christianity to America. Masons Rutherford and Russell started Jehovah's Witnesses. Judaism is now worldwide with their message of the divine kingdom. Mason Joseph Smith started Mormon Judaism with its Jewish teachings of millennialism. At the turn of the 20th century, there appeared the Scofield Bible with a Jewish interpretation of the prophecies. With wide use of this helpful aid, all the American churches have silently become synagogues. We now have Baptist Jews, Methodist Jews, Church of God Jews, apostate Catholic Jews, and many Protestant Jews throughout America. We are aliens in our own country because of a false religion. All are praying for divine deliverance into that divine government which Cornwallis knew to be the British Empire. I'm going to stop right there for the moment because that's exactly what we've got. I've told people for years, if you call yourself a Judeo-Christian, you might as well say I'm a satanic Christian. Go ahead, Russell.
Well, folks, all of you out there who are listening, let me expound on what Clay has just said. Excuse me a second. Hi, John. I'm in the middle of the show. You come in. You're a gentleman. I love you. You're the best. Come on in. You get it. But anyway, folks, you got to understand that the system today is not broken. It was designed to be the way it was. And for you to have a knowledge or a cognizance of this, You would have to go back to a great work by Manly Hall, who was a 33rd degree Freemason, who wrote The Secret Destiny of America, and Ralph Epperson, whether you like him or not. I personally like him. He was always nice to me. However, others have legitimate beefs with him, that he didn't tell the facts about aliens, extraterrestrials, or Jews, because he is supposed to be Jewish. However, he did expound the truth. And America was formed with the agenda, the hidden agenda, of, I should say, the open agenda of developing world democracy. But what is world democracy? Democracy, first of all, is the worst form of government. It is always will lead to an oligarchy. The mob becomes ruled by the hidden few. And that's an oligarchy. That's a dictatorship. And that's what you have now, an Orwellian dictatorship. Now, who designed this? Who were these founding fathers? Well, many will say erroneously that they were Christians. They were not Christians. They were deists. Better yet, what they really were was Freemasonic Rosicrucians. And you have to study the Rosicrucian dogmas. If America was a Christian nation, folks, you'd have Christian symbols all over Washington, D.C., but you don't. What you have are symbols of the ancient mystery religions all over the place. I'm not even going to go into it. Do your homework. Don't take my word for it. It's a fact. This country was formed by Rosicrucians and Freemasons who adapted Christianity as a cover. They mixed the Christianity with Rosicrucianism to fool you, to take you, to bamboozle you, to hoodwink you into believing that it's a Christian nation. It is anything but Christian. And as far as Judeo-Christianity, please, come on. It's satanic Christianity. It's not Christianity. It's the opposite of what Jesus really taught. And that's what you televangelists teach. Israel is really located, the country, the nation, in a land not of ancient Israel, but in Judea. And that's why they want the West Bank, which primarily before that was Samaria, and primarily before that was ancient Israel. Folks, the plan here is a world dictatorship to enslave you and make you into a worker bee in the hive of the Jew world order, because this so-called new world order is anything but new. They've been working at it for over 6,000 years. That's how long this has been going on. Now, I want to give you an example, folks, of what it would be like if you have a job and have money in this new Jew world order. There's a show right now, I believe it's on Fox. It's called Wayward Pines with Matt Dillon. People are basically kidnapped into a town where they are told to forget everything they were ever taught or knew. They're not allowed to talk about the past. All they're allowed to do is function and produce goods, sell goods, have a job to bolster the economy of the global elite. If one should talk about what transpired before in their past life, in this incarnation, I'm not alluding to reincarnation, their throat is slit. This is what you have coming, folks. And why do you have it? Because you didn't guard against the invader. This country got worse and worse. It was formed, the Constitution was made so that it could be constantly expanded on. And the Bill of Rights, which was not originally part of the original Constitution, could be gradually eroded, and that is what's happening. Now, I know many of you out there heard the news about Rand Paul, another fraud, who got a victory for you against the Patriot Bill in one of the southern states. This is all a scam. NASA is not allowed to spy on you anymore in that state because of this so-called victory of Rand Paul. Well, folks, NASA's been spying on you way before the Patriot Bill, and NASA will continue to spy on you. So will the CIA, and so will the Facebook ever imagined. That's why they block and hide and delete any posts that talk about Israel and its crimes against humanity, or the Jews and their crimes against humanity. Folks, you don't kick a group of people out of 109 locations since 250 AD because you just don't like them. Well, there's a lot of people I don't like. I don't want to kick them out of the United States. They have a right to say what they want, but the Jews, no. They're poison. They're toxic. They're leprosy. They're cancer. This is why there are many people that knock the Clay Douglas show, because the Clay Douglas show always tells it like it is. Clay has been doing this for years, since he founded Free American magazine that I used to read in the early 2000s. Folks, America is designed to be what it is, and it's going to get worse because you folks don't do nothing about it. You talk about how wonderful and free you are. Are you kidding me? Free? You talk about how bad it is in other countries. How do you know how it is in other countries? Have you been there, or did you just read about it in the Jews papers or hear about it on the Zionist-controlled media, who is owned, and that media is owned by Jews? Yeah, 96% of the world media is owned by Jews. Do you think they're going to tell you how wonderful it is in other countries? We have the worst health care compared to even Cuba, or to Russia, or Germany, or Amsterdam, or Switzerland, even England, which is not much better than ours. Our country stinks. And if you support the flag, I would never put out a flag. I will not support a flag that waves away my rights. It wasn't always that way. I was once asleep too, like many of you out there. But the reality is, America has a secret destiny, world government. And as Clay read in Cornwallis' statement, that government should be the British Empire. You have to understand your meaning of words. You have to study etymology or word roots. The word British comes from the word Brit. The word Brit means man of the covenant. The covenant that a Brahmin priest by the name of Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham, made with a demon god, an archon, a ruler, called Yahweh or Jehovah, whatever you want to call him. I call him Yahweh or Jehovah. I can't be had. I can't be taken. I can't be bamboozled. I can't be led astray. I can't be run amok. I can't be put to sleep. I'm awake, and awake for good. Can you say the same out there? Or do you want to hold on to this false belief system of Judeo-Christianity, which the Gnostic master, the Lord of the Magi, Jesus, did not teach because a bunch of insidious Jews told you he did? Come on, folks. They own Hollywood. They own the CIA. They own the military-industrial complex. They own the prison-industrial complex. They own FEMA. They own the Department of Homeland Security. These are all organizations designed to fleece you of your money and enslave you. When the fuck are you going to wake up? And yeah, I'm using profanity because I'm dealing with the profane. That's all I have to say at the moment, Clay. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on some points. This country, I believe, was with people like Patrick Henry formed to set the people free. But exceptions, yes, it's an exception. Patrick Henry is an exception. You're an exception. I'm an exception. But we have to have some way to organize, some way to be able to put together a resistance, and that's exactly what Patrick Henry and some of the founding fathers did. They weren't all good. Some of them were Masons. And I had a friend of mine that was a Mason. And all of your churches, if you look at the cornerstone on your churches, most of them have the cornerstone dedicated to a worshipful master. And they're not talking about Jesus, folks. Jesus was the exception. Jesus was the rebel that stood against the Pharisees that ran the money changers out of the temple, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm living up to, and you are living up to exactly what Jesus said. You can do what I do and more. Now, you know, if we put down everything, we're standing alone, and my God, I'm used to this. They've tried to kill me for telling the truth. They've tried to kill me for the Free American magazine, and they're trying to stop me now. I'll share it later. I'll have to apologize. I made a statement yesterday that Gilad Otzman, a wonderful jazz musician, plays the saxophone, which I used to play. Haven't picked one up since I saw Bill Clinton put his lips around one, but it's Gilad Otzman. I read a letter yesterday that was written to Allison Weir about me. They accused the Jewish Voice for Peace, attacked and tried to excommunicate Allison Weir. Her offense? She came on my show exactly like you're doing right now. And Gilad Otzman did not write that letter. That was written by some woman that was running the Jewish Voice for Peace. And later, and I'll do it later, I'll share it with people later, Gilad Otzman kind of stood up for Allison Weir, and by extension, he stood up for me. He said Allison Weir can't be responsible for what for the beliefs of a radio show host. And so my apologies for making this statement about good Jews. I said, you know, I'd be happy to support a good Jew if I'd ever met one. Well, maybe Gilad Otzman is one. Benjamin Friedman certainly was. Aaron Russo certainly was. They still, Aaron, bless his heart, he ran for governor of Nevada, and I backed him. I put him on the cover of the Free American magazine. Now, when they tried to kill me to stop the Free Americans, stop me, they did succeed stopping the Free American for a short time. But I brought it back out again, and right now I have restarted the Free American. I have it up. It's available. You can buy it on freeamerican.com or shop.freeamerican.com. And I said in that in the publisher's column on just a little ways into the first issue, I said most of you know the fact that I helped start and promote the militias as the 21st century rolled toward us. And I watched with millions of other Americans as the federal government attacked and murdered 100 Christians, including 17 or 22 little children in Waco. I swore I would never stand by and watch something like that happen again without trying to do something. So I started the Free American magazine and this radio show in 1994 from the north half of the only two-house town still on the map in New Mexico. You may be aware of this because powerful, well-funded Zionist organizations, ADL, SPLC, and AIPAC, began their assault on me and my family immediately, listing this old Texas biker in publication like ADL's Armed Endangers and SPLC's False Patriots, and even manipulated the FBI into including me into a flyer for police listing Clay Douglas as a right-wing extremist. As all this began, I knew nothing more than any American about the Zionist Jewish controls of money and mainstream media. I read the local paper and watched the Today Show while running 3 businesses, stocking my freezer with dolphin from the middle of the Gulf Stream. No, not flipper. Mahi-mahi to you landlubbers. And enjoying happy hour at the local waterfront bar. I watched Waco happen in horror and soon learned of what they did to the USS Liberty 25 years before Waco. I posted the story of LBJ and the USS Liberty on the 46th anniversary of that attack by Israel. I added a quote from Hitler about Jesus, and the attacks have been renewed in earnest. I learned that the Rothschilds bought most of the news agencies by the turn of the century. That pretty much controls your thinking and your perceptions of me and the matrix alike layer that composes your world. The Zionist elitists use, control, and hide behind the Jews in the same manner they do Christians and probably Muslims. The rewriting of the Bible by Schofield and even the term Judeo-Christianity should be a clue to their desire and plans for total control of us today. The term Judeo-Christian did not gain popularity until after the Holocaust in Europe. Reacting against the anti-Semitism of Nazi Germany, European and American commentators sought to define Judaism as an integral part is integral to the history of the West. And that term has been used as part of American civil religion since the 1940s to refer to standards of religious ethics said to be held in common by Judaism and Christianity. For example, the Ten Commandments are a great commandment. Now, I'm going to skip ahead here because I said here in the second column here, the Jews attack me, but hear the words of an honest Jew, unafraid to tell the truth. Jesus was not a Jew. Benjamin Friedman, Jewish historian, researcher, scholar from Common Sense in 1953. Christians have been duped by the unholiest hoax in all history by so-called Jews. This is considered their most effective weapon. This big lie technique is brainwashing United States Christians into believing that Jesus Christ was King of the Jews, in the sense that so-called Jews today call themselves Jews. The reference was first made in the English translation of the Old and New Testament centuries before the so-called Jews, as Friedman refers to them. I call them the Khazarian Mafia, before they hijacked the word Jew in the 18th century A.D. to palm themselves off on the Christian world as having a kinship with Jesus Christ. This alleged kinship comes from the myth of their so common ancestry with the so-called Jews of the Holy Land in the Old Testament history, a fiction based on fable. American Christians little suspect they've been brainwashed 24 hours of every day over television and radio, by newspapers and magazines, by motion pictures and plays, by books, by political leaders in office and seeking office, by religious leaders in their pulpits and outside their churches, by leaders in the field of education inside and outside their curricular activities, and by all leaders in business, professions, and finance whose economic security demands they curry the favor of so-called Jews of historic Khazar ancestry. Unsuspecting Christians are subjected to this barrage from sources they have little reason to suspect. Incontestable facts supply the unchallengeable proof of the historic accuracy that so-called Jews throughout the world today of Eastern European origin are unquestionably the historic descendants of the Khazars, the Pago, Turk, and Finn, Ancient Mongolia, a nation deep in the heart of Asia, according to history, who battled their way in bloody wars about the 1st century into Eastern Europe, where they set up their Khazar kingdom. For some mysterious reason, the history of the Khazar kingdom is conspicuous by its absence from history courses in schools and colleges. And this has been proved by DNA tests by the Jews themselves. They're admitting that, and that's why they are trying to take over and reestablish their country, Khazaria. Oh, where would that be, Russell? Here, make a quick guess. Where would where's the country?
The Ukraine.
Huh?
The Ukraine.
The Ukraine. Yes,
the Ukraine.
Where they murdered at least 11 million white Christians.
You know,
go ahead.
You're 100% right. The barrage or the assault on the teachings of Jesus and on the minds of the America and other countries of the West is overwhelming. You know what? First of all, these folks are not from Judea, so they're not Jews. They never lived in Judea. And in fact, in their Judea Encyclopedia, any one written prior to 1932 or World War II, somewhere around that time, they frankly admit in their Jewish encyclopedia that they are Khazars from Eastern Europe. So, Clay's right. You could call them the Khazarian Mafia. You could call them insidious, heinous, a rodent race of beings who are looking to take over the world. But I like to call them, the same way J.R.R. Tolkien alluded to them, I like to call them orcs, or the shadow of the East, meaning Eastern Europe, the steppes of Eastern Europe, Khazaria, which has been taken out of the history books for centuries now. You have to do some research. Fortunately, you have the net. You could look it all up. And as far as the words Judeo and Christianity, it's an oxymoronic term. Nothing is more opposite in its beliefs and concepts than true Christianity or Judaism. You could read that in the book, The Controversy of Zion, written by the former darling of the London Times. I forget his name right this moment. You could get a hold of that. Yeah, there's so many books on this. But you folks are conditioned by the overwhelming assault on your minds to read only what you're told to read, what your fake, phony, fraudulent televangelists tell you to read, what your politicians tell you to read, or what your false authorities, your misleaders tell you to read. So you're really and truthfully, in the main, a brainwashed lot. Like I was told many years ago, the masses are asses. And that's what the majority of people in America are, asses, jackasses. They're robo-sapiens. They're stupides. They're the Elohai that H.G. Wells talked about. In America is an emasculated group who just says, rah, 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 America. America what? Come back to Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry actually would not even sign the Constitution for two reasons. One is it did not have a Bill of Rights, and the other was it said the original writing of the Constitution that Henry was engaged in writing said everyone should be entitled to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. But Jefferson, who was an Illuminati member, took that out. So Patrick Henry conceded because they added an addendum, which is called a Bill of Rights, which they're gradually eroding. But they did not take out the pursuit of happiness and change it back to property. The Illuminati members didn't want the common people to have property, and that's why I say to you, because that clause is not in there. At any time they want, they could take away your property. Any time they want, because you have a colloidal title, not an alloidal title. Or vice versa. I forget the switch of the words right at this moment. In fact, the only good title to have is it can be gotten in a certain district in England, which means that you own the house. But you do not own your house. First of all, if you don't pay taxes, see how long you own it. If you don't pay property taxes. folks, you don't own your homes. You're only inhabiting them. You think you do. The American dream is is a nightmare. You have to be asleep to believe in it, as George Carlin said. Patrick Henry was a great soul. He wanted a better world, a better nation, but he didn't get his way. Oh yeah, he got the Bill of Rights in, but he did not get the pursuit of property in it. Watch, folks, all your property is going to be taken away by your government. The government that you worship, and you vote for their fake, phony, fraudulent candidates every 4 years to be puppeted, who are handpicked by the Israeli lobby, which is controlled by the B'nai B'rith Freemasonic Jewish Lodge, who is controlled by the Synagogue of Satan, or their leaders, the Sanhedrin, of which Rothschild is the ostensible, and I accentuate that word ostensible, king. Because you know what? I believe there's someone higher than Rothschild. Who? I have no idea, and it's almost impossible to find out. But, you know, I know we have many listeners out there today listening to this show, but the reality is this: the system is not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be eliminated, because statism is slavery. Go ahead, Clay.
We've been talking about Jade Helm, and there's a lot of controversy on that. There are some veterans networks out there that are trying to tell you that Jade Helm ain't nothing. It's just an exercise. And that a few Navy SEALs aren't going to take the guns away from millions of Americans. They could be right, partially. And it might be just an exercise, and I don't recommend that we go up and take up arms against our own veterans, our own subjects. As a matter of fact, I got a little wristband on here that says "Support our veterans," and I'm one of those. Now, I believe the veterans out there are our best hope. The militias out there are our best hope. And I've been to many of these organizations, from the Breakfast Club to the organizations down in Austin, where I was pretty much driven out of the organization in Austin because one woman there said, well, my grandmother was Jewish. You shouldn't be talking about the Jews like this. And this is what they do. They infiltrate every organization, put somebody that shares and talk about their sympathies, but it's always that the Jews are running things. The Jews are God's chosen people. That's a lie. The God that chose the Jews is not God. You could call him Satan. You could call, a lot of people call him Lucifer, and that's going to be interesting because I just saw a movie or a series out about Lucifer. Now, I had one that I submitted to HBO. Yeah, they wanted it, but the Jewish attorney that presented it, oh, you got to sign this contract, got to sign this contract, got to sign this contract. I'm sorry, I actually read the contract. And other than the part about HBO wanting my series, I also read the part about how you would control everything I've ever written. So, no, I didn't sign that contract, so I didn't get it on HBO with my story, my take on Lucifer or who he was. And now I don't even want to use the title that I had. I am going to probably call the revised story, the revised screenplay, and the book, The Immortals. Because there were more than one. And in that story, you know, the immortals come back. When this body wears out, they come back and they're able to remember their past and remember the access. And yeah, I'm writing science fiction. Now, this Jade Helm that's going on, again, there's a war to make you think it ain't what it is. We need to know that. But we also need to support the vets because they are our main defense. Let's see what this vets planning counter Jade Helm operation. Let's see what that is. Speak up here. Come on. And
well, Clay, let's talk about the veterans for a minute. The veterans know because the veterans, all of them, have been duped into fighting wars for profit when they were told they were fighting wars for freedom. And
right.
They've seen it. They've seen their commanding officers tell them to murder innocent women and children for the purposes of gain of politicians and the ones who rule politicians. Because what are politicians? Nothing more than parasites. There's not one good one alive. Statesmen have nothing to do with politicians. A politician is a tick, a parasite. The very word politician comes from the word poly and tais, two Greek words, poly, many.
Okay, but wait a minute, Russell. Here you're going again. I agree with the politicians, and I've been in presidential races. I traveled coast to coast with a presidential candidate that wanted to close down the Federal Reserve. And every time he got up to speak at the Republican...
That's not a politician, that's a statesman.
Okay, statesman, all right. Now, this film I've just noticed here that was sent to me is put out by Infowars.com. Now, the only problem with that is that anything that comes from Infowars is slightly slanted. They'll tell you about the Nazis, they'll badmouth Hitler, but they will never say anything about the Jews because Alex Jones is a Jew. Now let's see what the slant is that they're putting on this.
Joe Biggs joins us. Last week he called and sent emails to the National Guard because they've got the National Guard overseeing a lot of this Northcom, Southcom operation. And of course he's a former staff sergeant in the military overseas and domestically, so he has a lot of contacts, and I've had Joe overseeing a lot of our Jade Helm reporting. National Guard blocks InfoWars reporters from covering dirty bomb exercise. Captain cites nature of previous work as reasons for denial. Well, so if you don't like what we have to say, then we're not allowed to be there. Well, a lot of this is in public, so you can't stop us. But they'll have cops come up and say, under them, going, where's your press pass? First Amendment. I'm going to need you to come over here. Now, officer, you know you've lost lawsuits, and you can't make me not report. I'm not interfering with what you're doing. Just, are you trying to stop us from reporting? But that's where this is going. And then now the new article, Special Ops Veterans Groups have launched Counter Jade Helm Operation Initiative will observe the attempted infiltration of our towns. And this is to assess the local police and governments to see if they'll go along with a larger takeover and to begin these relationships. That's why many of these operations are very legitimate, to deal with a dirty bomb, which again will probably be set off by the establishment, or to deal with a chemical plant blowing up. But behind that are the Delta Force people and others who are specialists at going into third world countries and in a year buying off almost every town and city official with huge satchels of cash or gold. And they've done this all over the U.S. since the days of Clinton. And if you don't believe me in your mainstream media, I know you won't search it, look up Associated Press, San Antonio, 1999, Alex Jones, Ali Philippus. You'll read the whole operation. We blew wide open. And they got so mad, folks, they had special operations people threatening me in parking lots, grocery stores, you name it. Coming up to me going, you better watch your butt. I'm going to kick your ass. You better stop messing with us. And I would just say, okay, you're big tough guys. Go ahead and attack me then. And then they left me alone. But I'm telling you, folks, this isn't a game. Now, Joe Biggs is here with us. Joe, you've been on this. Let's get into them saying that, oh, you're not welcome at this exercise, and then going into the big news that you vetted and checked some of the sources. They're going to have a lot of special ops people, former, actually out there identifying these guys in these towns where they're practicing these infiltrations and exposing them. Joe Biggs.
Well, the big issue is with the National Guard blocking us from coming out there is the fact that they said we wouldn't give fair coverage. Now, what I thought was fair coverage was both someone who agrees with you and someone who disagrees, to get both sides of the story. So who deems whether or not something is fair coverage? I mean, they're that scared to have us come in and report on what it is we see, talk about the truth. They just want some, you know, lame reporter to come in there and just read off of a script. Well, we don't do that.
Well, we were supportive in Ferguson of the police overall because it turned out it was the crowds throwing bottles at them in the media, even though they attacked you guys.
Yeah.
We were still overall. I mean, we just report what really happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what fair coverage is going out and just giving your honest opinion about what you see, looking at it, filming it, documenting it, writing it down. And the fact that this guy's going to tell me, oh, well, after viewing your body of work and the people that you associate with, you know, i.e. Alex Jones, we don't want you here. You know?
Well, that's how the White House press corps is. If you ever ask a mean question or a hard question, you're not invited back. That's how you become a whore press.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And on to this Jade Helm thing, I have been, you know, looking into this since day one, since we broke the story. And over the past week or so, I would say, we have began to see people standing up and saying, you know what, we're going to do a counter Jade Helm operation. We're going to stand up and do what we can to go out there and essentially try our best to point out these guys who are, you know, going to be doing these operations. These are former Special Forces, Navy SEAL, Delta guys who are willing to go out there and counter this whole operation. I think that's great. But another thing we talked about off air, it's going to be infiltrations, of course. Stuff like that will happen. People will try to go in there, sabotage this movement. But there's
well, yeah, I mean, they'll claim they're with us, and I've seen them try to set a fire in Brooksville and blame me.
Yeah.
I had to stomp the fire out and then get the guy to stop doing it.
I mean, you know the story's huge. You know this is something that's real. When you're getting a large amount of people to finally just get up off their butt.
I was about to say, this may be something bigger the way they freaked out about it. We always report on these.
Yeah.
Why are they freaking out?
Now, that's kind of interesting because I almost agree with Alex Jones on this. I think that Jade Helm might be God's gift to us. Because the average people, when they see troops on the street, are going to start going, what the hell's going on here? Why are they doing this? And you know, I've always referred to myself as the canary in the coal mine. When they come after me, you're next. What do you think, Russell?
Oh, you know, Clay, that reminds me, it brings up a memory flash. In 1998, I went to Paris for 7 days, and I was with my ex-wife, and when we went to the Eiffel Tower, and when we went to the Louvre also, we went to the Louvre very often because I really like museums. But at the Eiffel Tower especially, there were so many military troops all around that my ex-wife looked at me and said, what's going on? I said, no, this is the way it is. This is a police state here, and this is what you're going to see in the United States. And being naive, you know, she probably still was wearing rose-colored glasses at the time. She said, oh, it'll never happen in the United States. I said, it's already happened. You just are not aware of it. And that was that. People, when they see military, the military get frightened. It's just like when they see a police car in the rearview mirror, because it's not right. The military should not occupy our streets. And neither should the police. There should not even be a police department. There should only be a sheriff's department to keep out the stranger and to protect and serve. The police, as I said many times, are nothing more than a janitorial service designed to clean up the mess after one has been raped, robbed, beaten, or murdered. And, of course, to make money for the bench bar monopoly, the Freemasonic court system, Freemasons owned by Jews. And, of course, the prison industrial complex, which is also owned by Jews, to take young men off the streets, especially black men, for what they do to the blacks is atrocious, and the whites for that matter, and put them in prisons and make them work for, forget about it, pennies. It's an atrocity, but this is America. This is what you idiots out there call the land of opportunity. Opportunity, your ass. Who the frack are you kidding? What the hell are you smoking? Whatever it is, it must be pretty good. Send me some. But actually, the smoking would wake you up. You're probably loaded down with Xanax and Klonopin or Valium and oxycodones or some other narcotics, because you're out of your minds if you think this is a free country. Yeah, go to work, go to school, obey your government, listen to your church leaders, vote, pay taxes, and now repeat after me. I am free. Folks, there are none more securely enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free, and that is America. America is a land of dogma, deceit, propaganda, and conspiracy. It's a nation owned by pigs, pigs who don't wear crosses and wear funny hats, controlled by wolves who dress in fine haberdashery, and inhabited by sheeple who believe anything they're told and obey. Well, I'm with Henry David Thoreau. The only path to freedom is civil disobedience. The obedient must be slaves. But when you disobey, I would say, do it covertly. Unless you're forced to, do it overtly. Be sneaky. Be silent. Be surreptitious as your misleaders are.
Well, now, wait a minute. I got to disagree.
The common good is done to enslave you.
I got to disagree. I got to disagree again here. They rule us by consensus. In other words, if you're silent, if you're quiet, if you don't speak up at these meetings and to your neighbors when you're talking to your neighbors, they consider you part of the consensus. So I don't want to be silent. I won't be silent.
Absolutely. We police each other.
Yes. And that's happening with the whole Veterans Network. That's happening with the Veterans Networks. I'm on Veterans Truth Network, and I can even get on Gordon Duff's thing. They've invited me on there. Does Gordon Duff doesn't want you to believe that Jade Helm is anything other than an exercise. I think it's more than that. And they closed the Walmart down just 40 miles from me. 2 Walmarts in Midland for years, and they closed one of them down with no notice to the employees. You got 2 hours and then we're closing. So what's going on with the Walmarts? They're supply depots. Maybe they don't want you to be able to use the Walmart to prepare. Maybe this is an oblique attack on preppers. I don't know for sure. And by the way, I just
rule you by
go ahead.
They do rule by consensus, just like the old story of the 3 cows in the pasture eating a lot of grass and whatever else they give them, and 2 of them are talking and saying, and the other one's observing. And the one cow is saying to the other, boy, it's going to be great when we get a little more fat and we could go. And then they take us to cow heaven. And the other cow is just looking on, and he's just watching him, and he says, you know, I got to get out of here. And he says, where you going? He says, I'm leaving. I don't want to go to cow heaven. I got to find out what this cow heaven really is before I make a decision. They look at him like he's crazy. He leaves. The cow comes back a few days later. He's missing, and he says, you're not going to believe what I found. He says, you know that cow heaven you talk about? Well, it's actually a big, giant meat factory where they take us there, they chop us up into little packages, and they sell us, and they call us steaks. They said, you're crazy. He goes to say something, they jump on him, and they destroy him. They got us policing each other. That's what they got. And by the way, folks, just to sum up what Clay was really saying, was that the world is not going to be destroyed by evil. It's going to be destroyed by men and women who stand by and say and do nothing while evil does its work. Because when you're silent, you become part of the consensus. The time has come today for you to stand tall and start speaking out. If all you speak out, they could do nothing. They don't do nothing about Clay. They talk, they talk, they talk. In the old days, they would have ignored us. Then they would have demeaned our character. We don't brag about our character. We know who we are. We know the mistakes we've made in the past. So they can't demean us. And if they kill us, well, they've killed too many people like us already. And we only come back. We only come back. Freedom is not going to die. As long as there's evil, there's always going to be good. As long as there's good, there's always going to be evil. So what's the key? The key is to hold evil in check. And you can't do that by being an ostrich and sticking your head in the sand and saying to yourself, what I don't know won't hurt me, because it already has. You're a mind-controlled slave. Unless you know in your heart you are free and you're your own person. The only people that are truly human on this planet are the nonconformists. The conformists are pathetic robots, robo-sapiens. I couldn't make it any clearer. The definition of normal to me is pathetic. As I said many times, we live in a large insane asylum called Prison Planet Earth, and the inmates have taken control.
All right, now, you know, I've mentioned and I've got up, you can go to my shop.freeamerican.com. You can get some of the magazines, the last few issues of the magazine that I put out. And in that you can see the screenplay I did for the Legends of Lucifer. And I told you I submitted that to HBO through an attorney there in Santa Monica. He happened to be Jewish, and he was a typical Jewish asshole. Wanted me to sign that contract. But that was over a year ago. Now, on Netflix, here's Lucifer. Russell, quit breathing into your mic. Weary of ruling the underworld, handsome and charming Lucifer, who has a love for wine, women, and song, ascends to the land of the living. Feeling instantly at home in Tinseltown, he decides to open a nightclub there. As the owner of a swanky Los Angeles nightclub, the former king of hell is enjoying his new life, but is dismayed when a beautiful pop star is slain outside his business. Soon Lucifer finds himself in an unfamiliar position on the side of good. Now, this is not what my book's about. This is not the way I wrote it. My story starts over 10,000 years ago when Lucifer was the co-captain or the first mate on the Earth ship, UFO to you, Heaven. One of several built for the immortals to maintain their technology and maintain a civilization at a time that I called the conjunction. The passing of Mars and Venus, or possibly a planet X, passing too close to Earth and created the flood. And if Lucifer survived that, my Lucifer, was kicked out of the Earthship Heaven because his God, the captain of the Earthship Heaven, which in my book I called Tetragrammaton Lord, you could call him Yahweh. He went insane, and he wanted to rule people and keep the humans as slaves. Lucifer opposed that in my book. But here I am on Netflix, and here's the title of my book up there, Lucifer. Is that just coincidence? Is it just coincidence that I moved back to Texas after 45 years, and I moved 3 months ago, I moved to Big Spring, and suddenly Big Spring, Texas is on the top of the list of the towns that invited Jade Helm here. Is all this coincidence? And then I moved back to Texas. Okay, wait, one more thing here. I moved to Texas. I moved to Cleburne, and less than 90 miles away, they attacked the bikers in Waco. This is Waco 2, folks. They arrested 170 bikers and charged them with $1 million bond each. And they killed 9 bikers. There was, and they billed this as a bike gang war. It wasn't. This was just a simple slaughter of the bikers and arrest. And now they're going to release them. They made it. They're willing to make a deal. We'll cut you loose on that $1 million bond. We'll let you walk free if you promise not to sue us. How about those things? Lucifer and the 50 years, I was one of the first members, or close, my first club became the Banditos. Don Chambers was, we spent a little time in Cofield Prison. Don was a good guy. Mother Chambers. And my first club became the Banditos, merged with the Banditos. And so the first time I come back to Texas in 45 years, they, after publishing 2 biker magazines over the last 20 years, 30 years, and suddenly there's a war on bikers, and Jade Helms here. Oh, it's all this coincidence, and then I open up my computer, my Netflix, and I find the story, somebody's story of Lucifer, and I'll give you odds that it's not half of the story mine will be. Go ahead, Russell.
Clay, I could get that from Netflix, that movie?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm going to do it. I want to see it. I want to see what nonsense. For those of you who don't know, folks, let's separate the 2 words, the 2 names, Lucifer and Satan. Lucifer is not Satan. The word Lucifer comes from the word light, or illuminated, or light bearer. Lucifer can be called, if you knew anything about Sumerian entomology, there were 2 sons of Anu, 2 gods. One was really a stepson from the star system Sirius. His name was Enki. He was a brilliant scientist. He knew everything about everything. He was the good guy. The bad guy was...
Hold on just a second. Excuse me. Got to interrupt you. Because Enki is a character in my Lucifer novels. He was the sidekick, the companion of Gilgamesh. I wrote this 45 years ago, folks.
Okay. Enlil wanted to create a slave race to mine gold in the African gold mines, which there is evidence of them over 100,000 years old. Enki wanted man to have knowledge after he helped create him. With Nigahatsu, the sister of Enlil, who Enki was in love with. Enki was the light bearer. Enki was the one who warned Uptanishim, who you folks out there know as Noah, but if you read the book of Gilgamesh, you know his real name was Uptanishim, and he was not Jewish or Israeli or a Hebrew or a Haveru, whatever you want to call them. In other words, he was not a rodent. Enki warned man to save man. Enlil was the bad god. Now, how does Jehovah come in? Jehovah, or Yahweh, if you study the Sumerian mythology, and all mythology has roots in fact, Yahweh, or Jehovah, is the grandson of Enlil. He was also known as Naaman Sin, because he committed a terrible error. He stole the stones of power from the other gods, and that's how he took control of earth. This is all written down eons ago, folks. And by the way, in the Latin Vulgate, in Latin, in the Catholic Bible, and written in Latin, you read in Peter 1, I, Jesus, am Lucifer, son of the morning, which is ample evidence that Jesus is a reincarnation of Lucifer. Lucifer is the good guy. He's been demonized just like the Arabs have been demonized by the Zionist-owned and controlled media.
Just like I have been demonized. Oh, Clay Douglas started to Malaysia. Yeah, you're damn right I did. And I did it in the governor's office. That governor was Gary Johnson. He ran for president on the Libertarian Party last year. hardly a terrorist organization.
The only terrorist organization in the United States is the United States government and all its subdivisions. The media who terrorizes you. The new military that fights wars for profit and terrorizes other countries. The television set is a great weapon. The televangelists are terrorists because they strike terror and fear in your hearts of a God who you shouldn't be afraid of. The real Creator is all merciful. He doesn't punish. We punish ourselves through the law of action and reaction, which you know as karma. What goes around comes around. That's why Jesus said, there's only one rule, the golden rule. Do unto others the way you would want them to do unto you, which is the summation of the 50 cosmic and spiritual laws of the universe, which you could get from YouTube. Folks, what it boils down to, everything you've been taught of importance is a lie. A lie told, a mendacious lie, an insidious lie, a heinous lie, designed to enslave you mentally. The only way you could set yourself free is through knowledge. You must gain knowledge, then you must apply that knowledge to every circumstance and situation of your life. And you must use what you were given as a gift by the Holy Spirit or the Divine Feminine, Pistis Sophia, as the Gnostics call her. And that gift is luminous epinoia, or creative imagination. And of course, wisdom and understanding. If you have creative imagination, you can apply the knowledge that is given to you by your Creator to every circumstance and situation of your life, and use the wisdom that she gives you and the understanding of that wisdom in applying it so that it's right on the money. That's your only salvation. In other words, you got to start by baptizing yourself. And I don't mean by a priest or a minister. I mean you do it yourself. You take symbolic water and wash away all the lies, the dogma, and the propaganda that you have been impregnated with since your early years. There's no other way for salvation. Because, folks, you are the Savior that you've been looking for.
Well, Jesus told you, you're
a lost race.
Jesus told us that you can do what I do and more. And no, David, Jesus was not the bad guy. If Jesus was the reincarnation of Lucifer, and Lucifer was demonized the same way Jesus was, they tried to turn Jesus into Satan. They tried to accuse him of that. Oh, he's burning in hell and boiling excrement. No, he wasn't.
That's what they say in the Talmud. That's the audacity that these heinous, insidious, and cantankerous and rebellious Jews, God's so-called chosen people, write about him in their holy book, the Babylonian Talmud. They say that Jesus and Mohammed are in a large cauldron of boiling semen.
Yes.
That's how nice they are. Folks, it's really beyond the point of stupidity, the nonsense that you have been inculcated to believe.
By the way, Lucifer, the name Lucifer, correct me if I'm wrong here, Russell, the name Lucifer, I believe, only appears once in the Bible. And as you said, Jesus said, Jesus could have been Lucifer reincarnated. This is my articles and my stories.
Actually, the word Lucifer, I believe, is mentioned. I think I just read something recently about that by a pretty scholarly author. I forget who it was. That the word Lucifer is mentioned only 3 times in the Bible. 2 books you could get out there that would help you on this would be. One is Jumping Jehovah by Paul Tice, Proving Jehovah is Satan. Or you could read Helena Blavatsky, Saying Jehovah is Satan. Her books, The Secret Doctrine and ISIS Unveiled, which you should be able to get from Amazon, and you used to be able to get it in the bookstore about 18, 19 years ago. That's when I got it. I got it in the bookstore in Huntington, Long Island, in town. I remember the night I bought it. I bought the 4 books, and then I went across the street to a nice pub, had myself some dark ale, some shepherd's pie, and a very good cheddar burger. Man, I could go for one of them now. But the book is important. You could also read, there's so many books. Folks, all you got to really do is take your dollar bill and look at the all-seeing eye and get a good magnifying glass, and you'll see it's clearly the eye of a reptilian. It's like Christian and Joy O'Brien wrote in their great work, The Shining Ones. He proved the whole chapter on Jehovah, about 30 pages, that Jehovah was a 16-foot reptilian. No one could look about his face because he was one ugly motherfucker.
Now, somebody on the chat room asked, does the guest believe the King James Version of the Bible or any other version or any of it? Thank you. I added many of the books of the Bible were left out of the King James Version. Go ahead, Russell.
First of all, King James was a pedophile. Second of all, his mother, I believe, was Bloody Mary. It's another book in the corrupted teachings. So you want to read a real Bible, read the Nag Hammadi Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and find out all about Jehovah and the Archons, the blind, mad rulers. Clay's right on the money saying, actually, Clay says in his book that Yahweh went insane. Actually, he was always insane. He was born insane because he wasn't created by the Father. He was created by Pisces Sophia, who created him on his own and made a grand mistake thinking she would create something for the Father and the Heavenly Father, but she didn't have the fire that the Father had. Therefore, what you had was a blind, mad dog God, an alien. But folks, the key is this, to know this. Know thyself and know that you are God. We're all gods. Jesus said that.
And so did Aleister Crowley, one of the most demonized men in our history. Do what thy wilt be the whole of the law. And if you study, I studied the occult. If the occult is evil, then shouldn't we know our enemy? It's not.
Absolutely, and a cult is not evil. It does not mean evil. It means that which is hidden.
That's right.
It's like the pentagram. People think the pentagram is an evil symbol. However, if the pentagram is pointed upwards, with the point at the top, meaning spirit, air, fire, and water, spirit ruling, it's a sign of protection. If it's turned upside down, as it is on the Masonic Bible, Freemasonic Bible, and the Jewish Bible, it's a sign of evil, attracting evil. Everything has a double meaning. Everything has its good connotations, and everything has its bad connotations. It's in the way that you use it. It's in the way that you use it.
Well, you know, that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to point out. If we just badmouth the Constitution, the America, then we are actually cutting the limb off of the tree of evil that we're sitting on. But
the first thing we teach our children is the difference between good and evil. So why does a God, unless he's a false God and has an ulterior motive, say he doesn't want mankind to know the difference between good and evil? It's obvious, because he is evil, and he didn't want man to know what he was doing was evil. That's why Enki stopped this false God, Enlil, by giving man the fruit of the tree of knowledge, which was originally symbolized by a quince. And by the way, if you cut the quince, or an apple, usually a quince, which is like an apple, in half, and you look at it, the seeds are in the shape of a pentagram. Now, isn't that interesting? Coincidental? I think not, because coincidence is a word used by fools and liars. There are no coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. We're all connected in a circle, in a hoop that never ends.
I actually have never even heard of a quint, so you learn something new every day on this show.
Quinca, Google it.
Right. Let me look at that. Got a Google up right here somewhere. QUI what?
Quince.
It's the sole member of the genus Cydonia in the family Rosaceae, which contains apples and pears. Well, that's kind of interesting there in itself. It's like an apple or a pear, but you can't get in the grocery store, can you?
No.
It's a small deciduous tree that bears a palm fruit, similar in appearance to pear, and bright golden yellow when mature. Throughout history, the cooked fruit has been used as food, but the tree is grown for its attractive pale pink blossoms and other ornamental qualities. It's native to the rocky slopes and woodland margins in Southwest Asia, Turkey, and Iran. They can be grown successfully at latitudes as far north as Scotland. Interesting. Interesting. Now, we had Eli James on yesterday, and one of the things that I put up there is the identity challenge that basically says the Christian flock has not yet learned how to discern the hypocrite from the true shepherd. We sincerely hope that all Christians wake up to the nature of this historical deception that has taken place in the name of Israel. The hour is late. Help us awaken our fellow Christians. Now, we've talked about the God. We talked about the deception. We've talked about, and what does the Mossad say? Warfare by deception. So they're definitely going to lie to you. And this not to mean that Christianity is a bad religion. It just means it's been infiltrated. It's been used. It's by calling yourself a Judeo-Christian, you might as well say I'm a satanic Christian. And I believe that we are, on this show, on the Free American Magazine, the Free American Radio Show, the Free American website, we have really gotten closer to the truth, the real truth, than anybody. And now, I've told people I'm just writing fiction in the future. You know, I'm not going to say this is my history of Lucifer. Is fact, I wasn't there. Or maybe I was. Maybe what I don't. I've wondered, Russell, do I have just an active imagination, or do I have a real good memory?
I think it's your subconscious mind talking to you about your experiences in past lives. It's a little mungled, but it still comes out with the gist of what you're trying to say, is that Lucifer is the good guy. Satan or Jehovah or Yahweh is the bad guy. I mean, he is a god of war. He was known as the storm god of the High Coast Kings. The High Coast Kings were the Habaru, which later became the Hebrew. By the way, as far as God's chosen people, I would really, 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 if I was going to recommend you folks out there to read one thing, I would get any Bible, and I would get the King James. Someone sent the King James, and I would read Deuteronomy as if you were Dr. Watson or Sherlock Holmes, because the devil is in the details. And you're going to find out that the Jews are chosen. They're chosen by Yahweh or Jehovah, whatever you want to call them. As I said, I call them Yahweh or Jehovah. They were chosen over the nations to root out, destroy the other nations until not a breath is left. And that's what it's all about. Sort of reminds me of the end of George Orwell's novel 1984, which was a truth, was a fact, a prediction of what was to come when the enemy of the character about the book says to him, I will not rest till a boot is in every human face. In other words, destroy the nations. Machiavelli. After you read Deuteronomy, go to Machiavelli and read how to control a nation. Take it over, a nation that's close to you as well as a nation that's far from you. And you'll say to yourself, geez, didn't I read that in Deuteronomy? And read in Deuteronomy where this Jew God said to eat your own children if you get hungry. This is a cannibal, folks. When are you going to accept this? Again, take the dollar bill. Put a magnifying glass over that all-seeing eye. The better the magnifying glass, the clearer the picture. You'll see clearly he's a reptilian. Yahweh is a reptilian archon, a blind, mad dog god, known to the Greeks as Ialdabaoth, or the demiurge, known as the moon god Sin, known as a destroyer, known as a storm god of the highest coast kings, El Shaddai. Wake the frack up. How many times do I gotta say it?
Well, now, if everything we've ever been taught, ever believed in, is flawed or slanted, and they've been doing this for thousands of years. This is why they killed Jesus, because he was trying to tell you the truth. We are in, people have asked me, Russell, don't you fear God? No. Why should I fear my Father?
What's that?
And if
the only thing I fear.
Go ahead.
The only thing that I fear, and I'm sure you fear, is your gene inflammation by the archons to make us into predators, which you and I have under control. But still, it comes out sometimes. We become so angry and so vengeful we want to strike out, but then our higher selves control us because we know the truth. But that's part of the mentality. Again, it brings you back to the situation that you always say, how do you destroy evil without becoming evil yourself? Well, it's easy. It's not easy, but all things are difficult before they're easy. You have to know evil. You have to have been evil. And you have to know the ramifications of being evil, the karmic comeback. Or what goes around comes around. And then you'll know why it pays to be righteous. And what is righteous? Righteous is doing the thing one ought to do at the time one ought to do it, and in accord with the spiritual and cosmic laws of the universe, which again, as I said earlier, can be summed up by the golden rule of Jesus, the Gnostic master and Lord of the Magi. You do unto others the way they want them to do unto you. However, righteousness is also stopping someone who tries to infringe upon your right to free will, and stopping him by any means necessary with extreme prejudice. That is righteousness too. And that's what you folks have to start doing. But in order to do that, you have to wake up, you have to baptize yourself, and I told you how to do it, and you have to get in contact with your higher self. In essence, as Jesus said, you have to ask and you will receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you. It's as simple as that. And with the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Like Clay said about what Jesus said, you could do what I do and more. But you gotta believe.
I'm planning on moving mountains. It's right at the top of my website, top left-hand corner. I want to move the mountains back into Texas, back into the republic. We never should have gave up the mountains. We never should have given up the republic. We should have never become a state, and we should secede right now and become independent, an independent country again. I believe that's you know, like you said, the United States. It's been set up for hundreds of years. It's been controlled for 100 years at least since we implemented the whole Communist Manifesto, which could be called, some people call it communism, said the rabbi. I call it Judaism for the masses. That's where you're at. You are being controlled. And it's never been, I don't think, Russell, that you or anyone else can give me a specific point in history where it was easy to be free. It's always been hard.
I can't.
It's always been hard, and that's what the Bible is. It's a story of individuals resisting tyranny. Good history book. It's a good history book, especially if you take the Schofield Bible, and throw it in the trash where it belongs. We had a preacher.
Well, I got a better idea. I got a better idea. Being that the economy is so horrible and we're in a depression being masqueraded as a recession, you could save money on toilet tissue. Use it to wipe your ass.
I had a preacher. I got a little Baptist church, or big Baptist church around the corner from me. I go there some Sundays and take notes. It's a Pauline Christianity. They talk a lot about the Apostle Paul and the books that he wrote. And I don't know, like I said, I wasn't a good guy. Maybe he saw the light. Maybe he found Jesus and followed his teachings. Or maybe he was a Pharisee trying to tell you, be a good slave. Don't rebel against your masters. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the preacher was talking about this, and I went up to after the service and shook his hand, and I said, you know, I think you're right on a lot of the things that you said here. However, what about, how do you respond to Jesus telling you to beware of the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan? What do you think he was talking about? And suddenly he didn't want to talk to me anymore, shook my hand, and greeted the next parishioner that passed by him. And by the way, let's see.
Hello?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I've got something else I pulled up here, and when I don't have a guest, I'll probably get into it more. It's called the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. What do you know about that? This is, what does it say here? Michael Knibb, whose translation I've used to produce this book, studied all available manuscripts and sources, and it's clear that this book was well known and studied in many countries well before the time of Jesus. The earliest known surviving fragments and quotations in various languages shown in this, that this is the same book that the Ethiopians have preserved it well. In the end, I'm convinced that this book is really Enoch's true accounts of otherwise forgotten events that occurred in early times, events that we have no surviving records of. Enoch left us a book which describes people of an advanced culture blonde-haired people from Enoch's people, considered to be angels of God, and was written on the angels' instructions. The standard academic view seems to be that some slightly demented religious fanatic wrote the book, not long before the earliest provable fragments of 200 or 300 BC. I think it impossible to support this view. Such an author would have to be able to write an entire book from the point of view of a person who knows nothing of countries with names or religions with names. Then he goes on to describe the angels as blonde men who ran away from heaven in order to be promiscuous with women. I don't believe this is the sort of worldview that would have been well received or widely accepted anywhere in 200 BC. This plus the all too accurate prophecies are probably the reason why it was lost by the religions that used to regard it as holy. I concluded that the book is probably what it appears to be. Well-preserved, ancient and genuine. Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah and the father of Methuselah, and his book gives a unique view of the world before the flood, which recent research suggests may have occurred as long as 17,000 BC. And this is what my Lucifer novels are about. That world before the flood. Whether it was Atlantis or Mu, I believe that that's why I write fiction. Now, this book was thought to have been lost for over 2,000 years, with many ancient sources referring to it, even quoting parts, but no complete copies were known. Then in 1773, James Bruce brought 3 copies back from Ethiopia, having spent some years exploring the country. Enoch had 2 main reasons for writing his book. The first was because the Watchers instructed him to do it. The second reason was to save his family from the flood. Enoch wrote his book after his grandson Lamech was born, but before Noah was born. Noah is only named in the section that Methuselah wrote, the book of Noah, so there may have been 40 to 80 years left before the flood at the time when Enoch wrote his book. There's a long gap between the time of the flood and the time when Moses gave praise to Enoch in Genesis. Genesis dates from 1400 BC and forms part of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. In Genesis, there is Enoch's family is named by him in this book. And a quick recap of Enoch's story. It seemed likely that copies of the book of Enoch survived into Egyptian times, 3500 BC, and was known to Moses around 2,000 years later. Moses presumably took a copy of the book with him when they all left Egypt, and he was no doubt pleased to see Enoch's prophecy fulfilled. The book probably existed mainly in Hebrew during the 1,000 years after the Exodus. No Hebrew copies exist today, however, although there are some Hebrew passages quoted in some of the Aramaic fragments that survive from a few centuries BC. The appearance of the book in Ethiopia is probably due to events in Jerusalem during the reign of King Manasseh of Judea, 645 to 642 BC, which are documented in the Bible, 2 Chronicles 33, 1 through 20, and 2 Kings 21, 1 through 18. King Manasseh was not of the Jewish faith. He erected altars to Baal and Asherah in Solomon's temple. In Kings 21:16 it says that so much innocent blood was shed that it filled Jerusalem from end to end. At this time, the religious establishment left the country, taking the Ark of the Covenant and all important religious texts with them. After a number of years in Egypt, the refugees went further south near the source of the Nile at Lake Tana in Ethiopia. The descendants of those people are the Philoshes, who even today follow the form of Judaism that had been practiced in Israel only before 620 BC. The Ethiopians translated the book of Hanukkah into Ge'ez and had enough respect to look after it. Meanwhile, all Hebrew versions disappeared, but a substantial part of the book had survived in Greek, some parts in Aramaic, but until Scottish traveler and Freemason James Bruce returned from Ethiopia in 1773 with 3 manuscripts, no one in the West had ever seen the whole book. The 2 commonly available translations were done after this, and the book was received with an embarrassed silence for the most part and not widely read. The book is based on a new translation published in 1978, which produced as a result into research of a large number of Ethiopian manuscripts and review of all other surviving fragments. My hope is that the present edition will be the best version of Enoch's book available in English. This is an important book. And we'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about that later.
Well, Clay, I must say, it was in 1986, right? And we were in New York. My ex-wife, we weren't married. We were just going out. It was 87. We were living together, and we went into Manhattan. We drove in. No, we didn't drive in. We took the train in from Long Island, and we went in Grand Central Station. And under the station, Grand Central, if you ever been there, there's all shops. And I went into a bookstore because I'm a big book collector. And I bought the books of Enoch, 2 of them, the Forbidden Mysteries of Enoch and the Book of Enoch. And I bought both of them, and I got into them back then. Books of Enoch, I have a great knowledge of both of them, and it's amazing. Enoch was supposed to have disappeared and walked with God, but it wasn't really God. See, Enoch in truth sold out, and but his son, whose name was Jared, struck back, and according to ancient lore, he defeated the reptilians. And I firmly believe that Tolkien used King Aragorn, or Stryker, whatever you want to call him, the actor Viggo Mortenstein, to play King Aragorn is really Aragorn is Tolkien's symbolic name, allegorical name for Jared, the son of Enoch, who kicked the reptilians off the planet and forced them underground. Very interesting, because I think it was the Council of Nicaea in, I think, maybe 500 AD, where they wanted to choose the books to be put in the Bible as if they had the dogmatic right to do so, and they threw all the books on the floor, and there were many protagonists for putting the Book of Enoch in, but the powers that be didn't want the books of Enoch in the Old Testament. So they threw all the books on the floor, and they said, whatever books are on the table tomorrow morning, we're going to lock the library and come back. Those are the books we put in the Bible. So they left, and when they came back the next morning, the books of Enoch were still on the floor, so they wouldn't include them. But what they forgot to tell you was who had the key to the library.
Yeah.
This is the way it is, because you know what? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why I say to you that all statism and all government will lead to slavery. It has to. Power does something to an individual. It does something to the mind. It makes one want more power, more and more and more and more, because it can't be easily satisfied. Man's lust of power. Just like Galadriel said in Lord of the Rings. Tolkien wrote it best when she said, and 9 rings were given to the races of men who desire above all else power, but all of them were deceived.
Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Interesting book.
you also got to really, if you're going to buy something, get the Silmarillion, because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is only part of the Silmarillion that Tolkien never finished. That really says it all. Very good analogy. Tolkien was a brilliant man. He had access to ancient books in I believe the Oxford, or was it Cambridge? I think it was the Oxford Library for over 40 years.
You know, I am working on the rewrite and still studying on my books. I wrote one about a future man. I called him Solomon, a reincarnation pretty much of Solomon, who, and you know, you could, the Jews believed that my character was the Messiah. The Christians, the deceived Christians, believed that my character was the Antichrist. And what I've said is they were both right. Now, when I'm talking about immortals here, I believe there was a time in the past when we had science and knowledge that has been pretty much lost to most of us. I've said there's two races on Earth. One has space flight, the rest of us don't. And the reason the whole UFO technology is so top secret, they don't want you to know that we could go to the moon for lunch and be back in time for dinner without using a drop of gasoline. The other night I had sort of another dream, a revelation, about the ability of these people. You call them gods, you call them heroes, you call them mythology, but they could manipulate matter with their minds. They could levitate, they could do a number of things, and the way they could do that was by controlling the atoms right down to the molecular level. They could turn water into wine, for instance. And
well, that's what Father Guido Sarducci said. He turned the water into wine.
And if you can do that on a molecular level, that really could set you free. That means you could change their molecules in this wood, in this table, and make it into something else. And I would say that the elitists, that the reptilians or whatever it is that actually do control this world, and we're probably seeing these battles, or not seeing these battles being fought right down to a molecular level, because they, if we gain this power as mortals, if we gain the ability to manipulate the atoms, there's no way they could control us. You could leap over that telephone pole. You could levitate. And that's some of the things I will be adding to these novels that I'm working on now. It's almost amazing to me when I go back to edit this. What I talked about 45 years ago was the United States abolishing all the laws against victimless crimes. People could generate their own energy from machines they could build in their garage. And the power companies and the gasoline companies and the churches had no more control. Is it magic? Was that magic? Were you able to do that? Do what Moses did? Was that magic? Or it was simply a knowledge of the physics of the universe? Is that just science fiction? Am I talking science fiction here? Maybe. But when I wrote about marijuana being legal in the 46 states. We've almost reached that number now. Texas is even talking about legalizing marijuana. Colorado's done it. Washington's done it. Alaska's done it. I was a little bit ahead of my time when I wrote it 45 years ago, sitting on that bunk in Cofield Prison. But there's been other fairly famous people that were in prison. I believe Paul was one of them. Some of the other apostles were put into prison for trying to transmit what they learned from Jesus. And what did Jesus tell us? Oh yeah, you can do what I do and more. How do we separate fact from fiction? Maybe what I consider fiction, or what you consider fiction, is closer to fact. And I've told people, you know, some of my books are not fiction. Mystery Babylon is not fiction. But my fiction, One Bloody Alabaster Eye and Deadly Flashes of Silver, is more believable than Mystery Babylon. And I wrote that. The One Bloody Alabaster Eye is good because it starts off with my character, Trevor Cameron, named after my sons. Trevor Cameron is investigating a detention facility in Colorado where they're killing people. You know, Russell, but they have imported guillotines into the United States. You know why? Because if you cut off someone's head with a guillotine, you can salvage all of the organs. And oh, the Israelis control the organ trade, and they can make a lot of money out of your heart and your liver, and they're doing that. Right now, they're using Palestinians and harvesting their organs. Whether they're using guillotines or not, I don't know, but it's you can't electrocute a convicted criminal and use his organs. But you can cut off his head. Tell me more a little bit about this Book of Enoch. You refer to the archons. I've referred to the archons. What are the archons? Demons? Angels?
Oh, the archons, you could actually say, are the Elohim. Archon means rulers. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the Nag Hammadi Scrolls, as they're also called, you could read the hypostasis of the archons. You should read the entire book. It's not easy reading, but after a while, you get the hang of it. And it seemed that eons of time ago, these archons looked down upon the earth and wanted it. And they came down and they recreated man into their image. In other words, they made him into a predator. That's why in the Bible it said, let us go down and make man in our image. Make man into our image is the correct translation. And what is the word us? God was supposed to be singular, but he's not. It's a group of reptilian, interdimensional beings that came down to earth and altered us. And I believe, because in the really ancient doctrines, the most ancient book on earth from Sanskrit, it says that, in Sanskrit, it says that when the earth and Mars were in perfect conjunction millions of years ago, the great Sanatkumara, Sanatkumora, came, and 100 assistants, again the Elohim, came down and saw the earth was a steaming primordial jungle inhabited by hermaphrodite beings that were both men and women, which was us, and they separated us. because they didn't want the divine feminine and the divine masculine together in one body. It was too powerful. So they cajoled us into allowing these experiments to be done on us, and I believe through the promise of greater sexual pleasure. And we fell for it. And now we're trapped in these bodies. And eventually, being in these bodies for so long, through so many reincarnations, we forgot who we really were, in essence.
The Bible says that too.
That we are gods.
The Bible says that too. You will forget who you are. Now,
and then you'll perish, because the people perish from a lack of correct knowledge. And what we have now is not knowledge, it is science, and I call science, I spell science Lyince. I call it liance, because it's one big fabrication.
Now, I have another...
Dostoevsky, the great Russian author, said, logic is a whore. You could argue a premise in one part of the country and in another part of the country argue against it and sound just as good. You could rationalize anything, and that's what's happened with the Bible. It's been rationalized with all the, if we didn't have government, it would be anarchy. What is anarchy? Anarchy is freedom, the freedom to choose. That's why I'm an anarchist. I'm certainly not a Democrat, certainly not a Republican, not a conservative, not a liberal or a moderate, not an independent. I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in government. Government, I know what government is. It comes from the two Latin words, gubernatori, which means to steer, direct, and control, and mentis, the mind. Government is mind control.
You stated that they made us to be the miners of the gold. You get down that hole in the ground there and bring out the gold for us. They used us for that.
Right.
For 100,000 years in Africa, they found cities that housed the gold miners. And there were other sources of it. Now, if these were interstellar beings, interdimensional beings, they used the gold to trade with. They used the gold as a source of revenue. What else did they use as a source of revenue? Where are all the pyramids? Where are all the pyramids? All of these civilizations up in Peru, in the jungles of Brazil and Mexico, and in Turkey, where the ark crashed, when the flood happened and the people came down out of the mountains. What did they do for income? What did they do for revenue? Where are all? What's the main product of all of these countries where all of these signs of civilization is? Drugs. I think we were basically colonized and bred by interstellar drug dealers, because this is a garden planet. And what's worth more than gold? Oh, cocaine, heroin. What does the CIA and the Mossad control? If you get my book, Mystery Babylon, you'll learn about Operation Watchtower, where George Bush, as CIA director, before he took over as vice president, before he tried to kill Reagan, he authorized Operation Watchtower, sent these special forces and Colonel Catolo, Edward P. Catolo, down to Colombia to build radio towers. Those towers were used to guide planes into Albrook Air Force Base. The cargo was cocaine. From there it was shipped, flown back to the United States by someone I happened to meet. Before they killed him, that was Barry Seal. And I still appreciate that bud or Oaxacan that Barry dropped off at my house in Dallas. I just didn't know at the time that he had a plane load of cocaine that he was taking to Bill Clinton in Arkansas. So nothing's changed. Thousands of years ago, they were growing the cocaine and they built a civilization around it in Peru. They've done the same thing in Turkey, the opium in Afghanistan, the heroin. And that's why we invaded Afghanistan. Those nasty old Taliban were destroying the opium poppy crops. Are you crazy? That's how the CIA funds itself. That's why we went into Vietnam. To get the opium, to get the heroin. That's why, and that's been happening for hundreds of years. Boxer Rebellion. We were drugging China before we were drugging ourselves here in the United States, our population here in the United States. Now, I lived in Miami for 8 years, and I've told people I stopped doing cocaine when I realized the CIA was making all the money off of it. I won't support the CIA. Your opinion on my opinions? Colonized by interstellar drug dealers? Got bases on the moon? Got bases on Mars?
They are interstellar drug dealers because drugs or chemical control of a human being is their goal. They made a lot of money off cocaine because whatever they do to control you, see the agenda is always control, but when they control you and they find a means to control you, they always have to profit from you, because as much as they love control, they also love the shekel. They also love the gold. You know, if you read a book which is called The Lost Science of Money by the American Monetary Institute, you would see what a human being was really worth in silver in ancient times. Silver was more important than gold. The aliens wanted the gold. I'm sorry, the interdimensionals or extraterrestrials wanted the gold. How do you say that, Clay? It's M-O-N something gold. Monoscopic or I think it's some sort of gold that they needed it for their atmosphere.
Monatomic. You're talking about monatomic gold that they can use for levitation and probably teleportation also. And it's got a lot of health benefits too, possibly immortality. Monatomic gold. Jim Mars did some good work on that. You can do Jim Mars monatomic gold and read about that.
Yeah, I got a lot of books by Jim Mars. I like his book Alien Agenda. I have a myriad, a plethora of different books. Problem is, a lot of these books are not accessible anymore to a lot of people, unless they, go to Amazon, and then you still can't get everything. But you could get quite a bit from Amazon. Thank God for Amazon and the internet. You're right. God's way of communicating with us is through the internet these days. It's certainly not the media. That's Satan's way. But, today was a very low-key show, but I think we got our point across, which is all we want to do. Whether we do it low-keyed or in your face, the gist is our agenda is not hidden. Our agenda is in the open. We want to shake you, wake you, and break the mental chains that have bound you for far too long. It's the only way to stop this enslavement of the human race and the eventual destruction of the human race by those who want to destroy it.
All right, we're out.
No other way.
We're out of time, Russell. I didn't play your commercial today, so give us that. How can people get a hold of you? Give us your website, and we'll put this up on YouTube. You'll be able to download it from my Facebook page in an hour or two and share it with everybody. This was a great show. You've done well today. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Give them your contact information.
You could contact me if you're looking for money to perpetuate your business, if you're actively involved in business, or if you want to work with me getting money for business owners by putting ads on the internet, free ads. You could contact me at rjppapa@yahoo.com. That's rjppapa@yahoo.com. All P's, no T's, 7 letters, rjppapa@yahoo.com. Folks, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you. God bless you. And folks, go to freeamerican.com, make a donation, shop.freeamerican, and get some of the books, get some of the magazines. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.